not saying that I made an error in the bulletin. It's only 1 through 10. Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. And it's, I'm reading from the New International Version. And we got some kids downstairs. Like I said, reading this in Bible study this morning, and the thing about it, you can't read this without thinking of the little song that you all learned back in Bible school or Sunday school. And so I said I might break into song, but I'm going to try not to. Anyway, this one is Zacchaeus, the tax collector. So Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, which we won't hold against him, he could not. Because of the crowd, he ran ahead and climbed into a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, Jesus looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." Thus ends the reading, Word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Thank you. This week I saw another church billboard sign. I'd like to share it with you before I start my sermon. You can't turn back the clock, but you can wind it up again. Mrs. Billy Cannon, a Knoxville, Tennessee homemaker, was preparing to paint her back porch. Some of us have done that before. She very carefully got some Gorilla Tape. I'm not giving you a commercial, but I live by that product. It has a sticky stuff, some of you can get on both sides. So she went around, clear around, putting it to the point where all she had to do was to go in and get a drop cloth to put on it. She went back into her home. After a while, she came back out, and there was no tape on the floor. She was mystified for a moment. She thought, who in the world would take time to pull this up, and how would they get it up so quickly, and why? As she was surveying the situation, she looked in the backyard, and she saw a snake. This is a true story, by the way. And the snake was larger than a normal city snake. She discovered that the snake was all wrapped up, entangled in the Gorilla both sides kind of tape, looking rather distressed. She, at that particular point, decided to leave the snake alone. Sensing the tape was really tucked away in the skin, she began to wonder how in the world the snake would ever get out of it, but she left it alone. The poor snake, though, reminds me of people that I've known in my churches throughout my ministry. Somewhere along the way, they've got stuck with the tape of life and they are entangled. Maybe they've made a serious mistake, one in particular. Then rather than calmly analyzing what's going on, they react impulsively to the point that they're immobilized either psychologically, emotionally, or spiritually, or all three. Perhaps Zacchaeus was in such a state that he sought out to see Jesus. He was a wealthy, keep that in mind, tax collector who was desperate to see Jesus, and he had a little bit of Joel in him. He wasn't very tall. So he decided to climb up the tree and look over the crowd. Can you imagine today? I was sort of daydreaming in the basement when the lower level. I'm sorry, Emily. We call it the lower level, not the basement. I was in the lower level thinking about this for just a moment. And I was thinking, what would happen if a City of Columbus official climbed up a tree years ago to see Billy Graham come through town? It's a long shot, but for Zacchaeus, something really did happen. Zacchaeus could have not been prepared for what happened next. As he sat on the perch of the sycamore tree, he heard someone say, "Zacchaeus, make haste. Come on down. I'm going to spend the day at your house with you." You know, I said in the Bible study, I don't know if Zacchaeus was married or what, but, you know, he didn't have a cell phone to call his wife up and say, "You'll never guess who's coming home for lunch," and clean the house up. Well, the writer says that he came down quickly. Zacchaeus joyfully took him to the house. Somehow he knew exactly what Zacchaeus had been looking for. It was with overflowing heart that Zacchaeus stood and listened as he said, "Behold, Lord, half of all my goods, I'm going to give them to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone, I'm going to repay them fourfold." Is there any doubt about Zacchaeus' sincerity? Jesus erases it when he says, "Today salvation has come to this house." Well, what happened in that encounter, we've just talked about here briefly. I'd like to do like preachers do, give you 3 points. Notice, first of all, that Jesus is more eager to see Zacchaeus at that point than Zacchaeus is to see the Master. Indeed, it's Jesus who calls Zacchaeus down. There are a couple of things that I think were happening there. In the first place, Jesus had a purpose, a meaning in life, to seek out and save the lost. That was Jesus' entire being of getting started in terms of being the Messiah, to seek out those who had been lost and give them full life. One of the things that might have happened, maybe Zacchaeus felt guilty about his life. He knew Jesus was looking for him. You may have come to this place this morning, or any other church or any place, and you are looking for help from your Lord. Jesus was looking for Zacchaeus more diligently than Zacchaeus wanted to look at the Master. Now this says something I said about Jesus' purpose. It's a kind of awesome thing when you think of that encounter that they have. You may have been reading about some of the developments that are going on with all of our TV channels. I'm still old-fashioned. I still love Hallmark and Walt Disney. I loved Walt Disney growing up. He took a group of people out in 1965 to look at a piece of land in Orlando, Florida. It looked like a mud heap, as one fellow described it. But Walt Disney envisioned a magical kingdom that would come out of the swamp. The corporation that he put together is still around, another name maybe used today, but Walt Disney was a man that could see beyond the immediate. It is a comforting thought to me that God can look into the mud and the swamp of my life and find possibilities for me that I've never dreamed of in my life. He sees hope for me when sometimes I feel hopeless. Many of you remember the play, the musical, My Fair Lady. My wife's going to be surprised I'm even mentioning that. I'm not always a musical choice as my first movie to go to. My Fair Lady, George Bernard Shaw. It was after a wonderful play that he had. It was a play about a brilliant professor, Henry Higgins, who transformed a humble flower girl, Eliza Doolittle, into an elegant English lady. In the midst of her brilliant transformation, Elijah falls in love with Henry, but he only treats her with disdain. To the end of the play, she expresses her complaint, and in her complaint she says, I know who I am. I'll always be a flower girl and not a person of elegance. Jesus was eager to make Zacchaeus more than he was. Here's the second point. Zacchaeus was changed not only by what Jesus saw in him, but also by what he saw in the Master. Two words that we talked about in the Bible study. The first was hope. The first is hope, and the second is holiness. There is a gift that we all can give, and the gift is giving hope to each other. Part of that is what we need to church, but it is also the example that was of a Persian king about holiness. The Persian king had basically a bad sprained ankle, and the folks that helped him couldn't do anything. And somebody said, you know, there is a slave that seems to be able to help people with some of their illnesses. So they brought the slave over, and he was weighted down with chains, dressed up in rags, and then he worked on the Persian king. And after a few weeks, he got better and better. And the king was so grateful, he invited the fellow to come back again, who actually, as I said, was a slave. And there he presented him a gift for all that he did. He gave to him a golden chain to wear around his feet. Zacchaeus saw Christ, and Christ gave him hope. He also saw holiness. Why is it Zacchaeus was willing to give up half of his wealth to the poor and to give fourfold restitution to anyone else? It was because of what he saw in the purity and the honor that was found in Jesus in comparison to the rest of the world. I talk a lot about William Barclay. He's a great, great biblical interpreter. He is now no longer with us, but he talks about taking a trip and going across an area to London. And along the way, there was a gorgeous kind of white cottage. And he says as he took the trip, he looked at the cottage, and it was such a beautiful thing. It looked like it had been scrubbed down. It was beautiful. He said on the way back from London, he said they'd had a snow. It was fresh snow. It was virgin white. And he said, all of a sudden I looked at the cottage again, and it looked sort of dreary as in comparison to the white snow. And sometimes that's what Christ does for us. Gives us a standard of holiness of how we should live and lead our life. That's important for many of us. Also talked in the Bible study about too many in a church today are only half converted. They want to be respectable for their neighbors, but they're not necessarily fully committed to live the Christian life. And finally this, what did the crowd see? They saw a third thing. The crowd of people that had gathered there, mostly they were there out of curiosity. They saw a popular religious figure who had come to their town. They saw two things, I believe. First of all, they saw that Jesus went home, not with a respectable person at that point, but with a sinner. That was a scandal for most of them. Luke tells us that they murmured among themselves. They were complaining. Normally, religious people, well, sometimes if they don't feel too good about themselves, they can criticize others. God save us from people who have been converted enough only to criticize someone else. Mark Twain was a humorist, as we know. He was bitterly religious in some ways, but other ways critical about religion. He said that religion needed to make people more than just respectable. The crowd saw Jesus go home to eat with the sinner, but they saw something else. They saw Zacchaeus emerge from that encounter as a new man. When light is turned on in a dark room, it's obvious. If a corpse were to rise from its coffin and live again, there would be no need to hang a sign around the neck to tell the world there had been a change. One of my most popular shows I liked in growing up, I'm dating myself in terms of age, some here will have never heard of it, Father Knows Best. One of the stars in that was little Lauren Chapin, who played 11-year-old Kathy Anderson. Those familiar with the Wholesome Family program remember little Kathy as innocent and certainly charming. Unfortunately, Lauren Chaplin's real life was anything but that. We are told that Lauren's mother drank heavily and was on drugs. When Father Knows Best series ended, Lauren could not find another job in television. Alienated from her mother and from the world of make-believe that had given her substance to her life, she began running wild. She turned to drugs, casual lovers, and fast company. The next several years of her life were filled with 8 miscarriages, welfare, a mental hospital, and a host of time in various community jails. At age 38, Lauren encountered Jesus Christ. She said, "All my life I've wanted to be loved. God's love is the most complete love, and I think that's what I was looking for." That's why the Son of Man came into the world, to seek and to save the lost, to free us from our own entangled lives. Jesus sees within each of us more potential than sometimes we see in ourselves. In Him we see both hope and holiness. That is why we encounter and have encounters with Christ. The believer seeks to correct the problems in his or her life, not out of duty, but out of joy, out of the determination to resolve the differences between Jesus' life and ours. I think it's no wonder Zacchaeus welcomed Jesus so joyfully into his home. Wouldn't you? If you believe that a change is possible, wouldn't you welcome that into your life? I keep talking about Carly Simon. I love her of the 80s. There's a song, not really popular, but I'm going to close with this one-liner. The name of the song, and I've mentioned it before, Last Night When We Were Young. Last night when we were young, we may have failed to recognize the Christ. Today, we're all a lot older. May we feel the power and the love of the real Christ. Amen.